Hi, I'm Abby Chick. Welcome to the second part of our series. Today, we will be breaking down the ingredients, the stem placements, and the overall shape and form of this loose, organic, asymmetrical style that all of our customers are sort of gravitating towards. Of course, we're still doing our traditional low and lush roundy moundies. We all know that those are super profitable and really quick and efficient to create. They're also really easy for newer designers to learn how to make. And so keeping those in your catalog, I think, is a really smart move, especially as you're transitioning to this more open form style. It can be nice to have sort of those bread and butter arrangements for us to fall back on, really get the profit, and then take a little bit of time to really perfect this style. When I started designing in this way, it took me a really long time to make one of these designs. It wasn't until I got some proper coaching that my designs stopped looking so ratty and messy and unintentional. There is still a pattern here that I use, and I teach that to my designers so that they can replicate this style with ease, but also so that they can replicate it quickly, because again, we have to do everything in our business through the lens of profitability. So as you can see here, there is kind of that open form V shape. When I started really looking at this style, what I noticed, whether it was a little bit lower and wider or this V was more exaggerated, it appeared to me that there were almost two isosceles triangles that were meeting at the base of the arrangement. So you'll notice here that the lowest part of the design is in the middle. And there's usually some extension that feeds upwards and out. And to what degree you do that will really depend on your personal style or what you think your customers will most easily move to if they're kind of used to more of a traditional styling. This particular design, this is something very typical because this color palette is one of my favorites. I really like the corals, the pinks, the peaches, and I often find that these arrangements look the best when the color palette is a little bit more simplistic. So an analogous color palette, or even a monochromatic sometimes, or a dyad, where there's really two colors and you're sort of just moving up and down on that segment of the color wheel, makes this feel really full and expensive. Whereas if I tried to blend a bunch of different colors like red, violet, and orange and blue, it would maybe seem a little bit disjointed. So I think that's a little bit more of an advanced color palette for this. So I would say if you're newer to this style, I would try to stick to those monochromatic, analogous, or complementary palettes, because the hallmark of this design is a lot of different flowers and a lot of texture. So there's a lot of variety here. We have several different linear greeneries offering that movement. We're using form flowers, different sizes of mass flowers at different depths. We have nice clustering and extension moving out, not only from the sides, but also the front and the back. And you'll also notice that my front of my arrangement doesn't exactly match the back, but I wouldn't think of this as like the back of the arrangement. I sometimes like to think of it as just another front. So when you're kind of working through this, you have to make sure that those ingredients that we discussed in our last segment, that we're really giving a lot of variety to it. So this arrangement would actually retail in my flower shop for probably around $125, which at this point is an average price point. When I was making more simplistic, straightforward designs, I wasn't commanding that as my average price point. And because of this, I'm able to use some of these novelty varieties that cost a little bit more. I didn't do that overnight though. I still had to kind of start moving towards this shape using the hardier, less expensive blooms so that I could lead my client to where we are now. So you don't really want to, pull the rug out from your clients overnight. This is a transition and it will take time, but using some of the tips that I share with you today, I think you'll be able to make the change just like I did. A teacher once told me, if it's good design, make it twice. And that is what keeps so many of us profitable, is that we're used to creating sort of those catalog cookie cutter images over and over and over again. And it's not like they're typically going to the same person each day. So you might have 7 different people in your community all receive the same arrangement. You can still do this even when you're trying to make your arrangements look bespoke, one of a kind, kind of non-conforming. This loose, asymmetrical style still utilizes all of those basic principles that we learned when we were making a pyramid design or that roundy moundy that's so popular. I have here a very simple color palette. This is pretty much complementary, a little bit of an analogous with a complement, because these Gerber daisies, these are the star of my show here, they have sort of the yellow all the way to the red orange in them. So I pulled from these and I pulled a little bit of that darker color. I have some cutoffs that I save in my cooler, which I hope all of you guys are doing. If it's got more than an inch, I'm saving it in a bucket in the back of the cooler, because this style really allows me to utilize some of these smaller offshoots, because your design starts very low. So you can use things that are only, maybe 4 inches length in the stem. And I find that to also really help with my bottom line. So I've got some line flowers here, snapdragons, and then the blue delphinium, which is a beautiful complement to all of this orange. Let's see, I might pull some carnations here. These peach carnations are really pretty. They might be a little too pinky. We'll have to see. Sometimes I pull things and don't end up using them. But I'm working here in a ceramic vessel, and when I am working in ceramic, I will typically use chicken wire. It's just my preferred method. A little bit later, we will show you a design in clear glass, and for that, I use a different mechanic that is also a time and money saver. You'll notice I don't have any mass greenery. I'm really able to get the look that I want with scraps of linear greenery. So we have a pearl acacia and a grevillea, and I think that's all we're really gonna need, because I am using a hydrangea in the base. So we'll take this down pretty short and lay that in. I could put this in the middle of the design. I'm actually going to kind of keep this a little bit off to one side. If I'm working with 2 different types of foliage or filler in the beginning, I'm not going to really mix them and put them all around the design. I like to keep one sort of segmented to one side and the other on the opposite side. So I've just got 3 little acacia extensions kind of coming up and out over here to the left. And now I'll look at my grevillea, starting with some of these shorter pieces, and we're just doing the same thing. I typically like one side of my designs to be higher than the other, and the other to be a little bit lower and longer. So I'm deciding to make my low long, the grevillea. And I don't want to cut this arrangement right down the very middle. If this is an asymmetrical, you want one side to be more like 2/3 of the arrangement and this other triangle to be 1/3. I think it's really important to be able to move back at least a foot from your design when you're making it to make sure you're breaking the line of container. Okay, so now that I have a little bit of mass set and some extension with my line, that's sort of my framework. That's where I'm going with this design. I am going to add in some delphinium and keep this blue extending upwards, sacrificing a couple of blooms down here at the bottom if I want to cut it a little bit shorter. And I'm sort of trying to make almost a triangle coming out this way. I typically use 3s because I find that very easy. And then over here, I'll take the snaps and we will extend that line that we've started. Making sure that I'm keeping these two not totally up against one another, but supporting one another. And the easy thing about chicken wire is that if you don't like where something is placed, it's pretty easy to change it. I like my snapdragons to face upwards because I think they look more alive, especially in this style that can very easily look ratty or droopy. Really keeping close eye on the direction of your line flowers is very important. So we've got a little bit of thistle. What I want to do now is take this blue and kind of shoot it through to the other side. This will help my design not appear as if it's just straight blue to orange right down the middle. I'll do the same thing over here, bringing that thistle through. A little cut off. Having it really come out at me. Okay, so these Gerbers, like I discussed before, anytime there's that dark eye, you might inadvertently create a bullseye and it just stops your eye from flowing through the design in a way that you would want. So I'm going to make a decision now. Because these are larger, I find it that if you have a side that you're trying to keep dominant, sometimes, even though this would look really nice with that snapdragon, it's going to help keep this side my dominant side if I pair that over there with the blue. So when I place this low, I want that to break the line of the container but I also don't want it just kind of stopping and looking right at you. So I'm going to be careful about its direction. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then I'm going to layer another Gerber right over top of my lower. You can see it kind of moving through the design. You can still see that there's 3. And I'll show you what you can do on this backside. Now, if you have enough money, you could add another Gerber. That can get expensive. So something that I like to do is look for a way to bring up this color right above it. If I have a ranunculus in that color, I could float something over top of it that might help it blend in a little bit more, or I could bring something kind of up and over it that shelters it a bit so that that eye isn't looking directly at you. I'm going to make that decision a little bit later. Now I'm going to take some carnations. I had these 3 little cut-offs that I wanted to use. It's okay if things shift around on you. You can always turn them back upright. But I'm making sure to bring things to my back and not always just focus on the front of my design. Okay, liking that. Now these roses, I want to create depth and dimension so that not everything is so flat here. We're going to bring this out, but we're going to make sure that we extend it beyond this carnation. This will help with that depth. If I have a little bit of a darker color, I'll sometimes feed that pretty low into the base and shoot something else out there. We're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to take this rose up and over that Gerber. Okay, looking pretty good. I just found another little thistle. Stick him down in there. What else do we have? Ooh, Tweedia. This is a smaller blue flower that creates a little bit more line and extension. So again, right here where we've gotten a little flat, I can take just a little bit of that and kind of give it a little bit more life. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Any place where I've got mass, that just feels like a spot with no life, I'll just put in a little bit of texture there. Got a little squirrely guy here from our delphinium, so I always save those. And I'll add him over here just to give a little spring of life. You don't want this so flat and lifeless in the middle. You still want to offer a little bit of texture and whimsy. So I don't really think I need any more mass flowers. I think if I added these, they're a little too much more of the same. I might check my bucket here to see if we have a little bit more texture or filler that I feel would add to it. I'm not opposed to adding a little bit of lime green into this. I don't think it's wrong, but I think it would make it a little bit too ratty, in my opinion. So I could leave it as is and be relatively happy, but what I actually think is going to be the best fit for this are some of these mums. So this is actually one stem of mums that I broke down to use in another arrangement and decided that I didn't actually like the color with them. So I put them in a little vase and kept them. And I really think because of the white at the bottom of this container, it could benefit from bringing up that lighter tone to incorporate that. And that's going to give us a smaller ingredient, something in between the size of the carnation and the line and extension of that snapdragon right in there to kind of blend that area out. So something smaller and longer. Pop another short piece right there at the bottom. Do the same thing over on this side so that we're kind of pulling that creamy palm through, and we're again strengthening that line that we created with the delphinium to make that more impactful. Absolutely. This is exactly what it needed. And just making a couple last minute adjustments. Like I said, in the chicken wire, especially as you're learning this style, it makes it really easy to make those amendments as you perfect it. Okay. And that's it. Ready to go. I think the ceramic also helps it command a higher price point, but if you can't afford that, this would easily be, picked up. I could move this within the chicken wire to a glass vase and then do a leaf wrap around it. Really easy to change out the container too, if need be. When I think I've finished up my arrangement, I just like to kind of take a big step back, make sure that I've broken the line of my container, that there's nice extension on all sides, and that if there is a place that I feel like is a little bit flat in relation to the rest of the design, I can just move out some of these original pieces of greenery and put them in between my mass flowers. That just makes it blend a little bit better and makes the whole design a little bit more cohesive. I wanted to give you guys a real world sped up example of how you move from making this to making some of the designs I just showed you. So this is actually a design that we have on our website right now. It does really well for us. Like I said, we're still making roundy moundies all day, every day. But we also have a lot of people who like a more open form style. So if this is something you kind of want to train your designers to be better at, but also train your customers to expect from you and to ask for, you really just have to learn how to gradually transition the style. So this here, very easy for me to kind of take apart and just make a couple of moves. So you see in the rounded design, your highest point is here in the middle. What you really need to do is make the lowest point of the design in the middle. So we're going to kind of move that out, take these short delphinium out to the sides. I'm going to take this mass out from the sides, and I'm even going to shorten some of this pit. Okay, could potentially even take some of it out altogether. I think we don't need quite so much, but I'll move those pieces of status, start clustering them a little bit and having them stick out the side a bit. And the next thing is we will take these large mums, take some of that greenery out, like I said. We're going to take these large mums and drive them down into the center and layer them. So you can kind of see that line moving out that way. Okay, there's nothing I can do to add any length back on here, but I'm going to snip out more of this greenery. And I think we could probably get by with a couple less roses in here. Okay, I'm liking that. Take these mini carnations. Take the single guy out to the side now. Take out again more of that pittosporum. I just don't think we need it. Let's find our tallest rose. See, they're all cut at the same plane in a roundy moundy. You really want to exaggerate those lengths. Okay. I am going to forego some of my pit, one of these roses, and all of this really clustered dianthus over here in favor of another stem of mini carnation. And then how about, this is a Montecasino that I think works, but is ultimately, if I wanted to use this as my main line that extends, it's still a little bulky. So I think that while it would be pretty in here, it's not what we need. We need something that's just a little bit skinnier. So I'm gonna go with the Status here. Kind of that cool toned lavender. Matches that blue. And then I can finish it off with some greenery. And I think we're gonna go with one stem of Plimosa. So I'm actually gonna stick this in. Instead of cutting it from the top down, I actually like to put it in the design so that I can make some better decisions about where to cut it. Sacrifice a few of those plumes and have it sticking out this way. And there we go. Same basic design, same flowers, but we've just opened it up a little bit to make it feel a little bit funkier and a little bit more trend forward. So the way that I would kind of sell this to my client is say, oh, sure, we can definitely do that. We've got the flowers. Do you want us to add a little bit more air and height into the design to make it a little bit more garden style? 10 out of 10 times they really go for it. And it helps you to gain your customers' trust. So by offering them something very similar to what they already saw and what they liked, but kind of steering them in a different direction, you gain their trust so that the next time they call, they're more likely to say, oh, I love everything you guys do. You guys just do your thing. My final pitch for this style of design is actually the reason why I love it most, and it's because of profitability. So we all know that cooler arrangements are great to have ready to go so you can sell them to your customers. However, once you've made something, it kind of is what it is when you create in that rounded form or, you know, that pyramid style. It sort of is where it is and there's nowhere for it to go. I find this style of design very easy to expand upon because it's so versatile. So when I'm designing for the cooler, I'm going to make something sort of in a simplistic color palette. Let's say this arrangement is around 65 and it wasn't flying off the shelf. The next day that I have it, I'm looking at what I have in the cooler, and as I'm speaking to my customers, I'm thinking about the arrangements that I have and how I could transition them. So if I have a client who says it's his wife's anniversary, it's going to her work, her favorite color is purple, and she likes moody colors, I will probably try him on a $75 to $100, $125 value, and I can pull this out of the cooler and transition it very easily. So I can take a little bit more purple and a line flower. And because I already have this open form shape headed in this direction, I can just make it bigger. Can use some of these. Now that we're making the arrangement a little bit bigger, I can handle a line flower that has a little bit more girth to it. Add in a little bit of the dark plum ranunculus. And even though it's technically a mass flower, you don't want to cut these short. Part of their charm and their allure is that they're sort of dancey and floaty. Again, just creating more linear movement out to the sides there. Come in with a purple Lisianthus. Building more of that dimension up and out. You don't want to keep everything in this area here. You want to still maintain your upward motion out to the sides. And if you've got mini gerbs, you can also use these on the extremities of your design, which I like because gerbers are expensive. They're not necessarily a cheap flower. So when you're using the larger gerbs and they have to kind of stay low in the arrangement, they don't feel like they're taking center stage. This actually kind of puts them in a place of importance and they start to feel really special again. And then we'll just finish it off with another plumosa. And there you go. You didn't waste any flowers on design that wasn't selling, and we were able to really quickly make something totally different and bigger using the base of a smaller design. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've taken away some helpful tips to allow you to step outside of your comfort zone and try this style. Like I said, we don't even really have a definitive name for it. Sometimes we think of it as soft asymmetrical or open form, loose and airy, gardeny. However you want to relay this to your customer base is up to you. I tend to call my style artistic, gardeny, funky, and that all tracks here. It really depends on the flowers that you use and the varieties, the different textures that can give it some of those characteristics. As you can see, I sort of have a go-to shape, and that's totally fine because it's what my customers have come to expect from an Abby Chick design.